Hello and welcome to today's webinar, What's New in VAPS, Sequence Dependent Setup Times. And although this title of this webinar, this Sequence Dependent Setup Times, is quite clunky, I'm super excited that you are here today with me, that you take your time to join me for this webinar, or even if you can't join us, and you hear me now talking, then you're listening to the recording, and I'm excited as well that you take your time to join me for the recording, or as I said, join me live now for this webinar. And there are a couple of reasons that I'm super excited about this, and I will share all of these reasons later. It's not only the functionality that I want to share with you, but also the fact that it is there. But first of all, my name is Martin Karlovic. My role at Boyum is I'm a vice president in sales with the responsibility for our global partner business. There's a question coming, which is great. So yes, housekeeping details before I introduce myself. You're on mute, but you can ask questions through the GoToWebinar chat pane. And yes, the question was, will there be a recording available after the webinar? Yes, of course, there will be. And it will be shared via the link to the recording will be shared with you via email over the course of the next days. So yeah, you're muted. Feel free to ask me any questions using the chat pane that you have. When I'm, as now, on PowerPoint, then I most likely answer the question right away. If I'm doing demos from time to time, I just do not see the questions coming up, then bear with me, stay in here, and then after the demo, I will look if there are some questions, and then, of course, I will answer them as good as I can. And if there are questions that I cannot answer, then I will mention it, that I saw the question that I won't be able to answer, but that then I will take it offline or follow up directly after the meeting, or pass it to a colleague to follow up with you. So please free to ask any question. I would be excited if we could get a cool dialogue today about production scheduling and sequence-dependent setup time. My name is Martin. I'm responsible for the global partner success with all our cloud products that we have at Boyum, and the VAPS and everything that we do for Dynamics Business Central falls into our cloud product portfolio, so is under my responsibility. So I have a really passion for manufacturing and Business Central, and until recently I was CEO and owner of Netronic Software, and I sold the company, or my brother and I, plus the investor we sold the company to Boyum earlier this year because we saw a lot of potential for synergies, and we saw that if we bring together like the small Netronic into the large Boyum, we will achieve, like going forward, the potential to provide you as our partners and customers with much bigger value. And so in my new role here, I'm super committed to help manufacturers and partners working with manufacturing customers, that the companies that produce stuff, so the manufacturers, can bring their products to life. As said, I'm passionate about manufacturing and Business Central. So I used to host a podcast called the Business Central Manufacturing Show, and there are a lot of people who currently encourage me to continue with this. So stay tuned for some episodes to come later this year or next year. And I'm authoring also a market survey, which is called the State of Business Central Manufacturing Report. And if you don't know it, reach out to me under maka@boyumit.com, and then I will provide you with a report. Really cool figures in there and worth to have a look at. So then, setting the scene for this webinar, and this is what I have been doing when I was running Netronic, and now I continue to do, is that whenever we meet, we make sure that what you can expect, and we have been classifying our webinars by how familiar are you with our products, and will I focus more on feature and function, or will I take a deep dive into business process and best practices? And today, this webinar, this will be about feature and function, but it's definitively advanced stuff, because the SDSD function that I will talk about later on is a very advanced scheduling function, and it requires also to some extent that you are familiar with the VAPS, that you're familiar with production scheduling and Business Central, so that you can assess the delta and the value that this function can bring to you as a manufacturer or to you as a partner if you serve manufacturing customers. So I will not explain what the VAPS is and how the VAPS works and how scheduling with the VAPS works and why the VAPS is a cool thing if you work with Business Central Productions. I won't do this right now. There are webinars that we recorded in the past, and there will be webinars where we will be more introductory again. But today it is really like, it is heavy load and it is features and function and not about business processes. So just to set the scene with respect to this. Now, one of the things that used to make me proud in the past is actually the most ugly slide that I've ever used in webinars, and it gets uglier and uglier with every webinar that I run, and this is this slide. And now I'm super glad that I can share this slide again with you, because it shows the track record that we have with product releases with the VPS and VJS, which I won't talk about today, and the VAPS. And when we were Netronic, we used to have one release per quarter over a really substantially long period of time. And this year, we changed it for the VPS and VJS and said, okay, we will have it once half a year, so we will slow down a little bit because post-product's more mature. And we said also we want to focus on VAPS because VAPS brings by far the biggest value to Business Central customers and users. And we know how things are. We had the acquisition, and with the acquisition, of course, things change. And I'm super happy, and I'm also like grateful for Sasha and his team, and also proud of them that despite the fact that we were acquired, we managed to kind of ship the new version almost in time. So you see there is no release in the in the second quarter, like in the April to June timeframe, but the product was released early July. So although the ownership of Netronic has been changed, like this best practice and the continuous enhancement process, it continued, and we have all the intents to continue it. So I cannot see any tendency here to change this process. Opposite, we are looking to establish this type of process also for some other product that we have. And so every time we ship a product, there is bug fixes, there is housekeeping, there is new features and function. And from time to time, we also enhance the API that our products have so that you as partners get new events and objects that you can build upon. We, of course, always release for Microsoft App Source so that everything that we do is available on App Source. And oftentimes also high degree of the release we are doing is actually inspired or driven by ideas that we get from you as partners working with customers or directly from you as customers. And with every version we ship, we support the latest Business Central version and the previous two ones. So this also is like, if you are on premise, should be a motivation to update to the latest Business Central version and don't like make the mistakes of the past to stay on an old version for too long, because not only us, but a lot of ISVs and developers aim at serving like the latest version and not go too back in history. And so again, this slide makes me extremely happy, extremely proud, because despite the change of the ownership of my company and now being part of a large organization, we didn't lose the traction, we didn't lose speed, we didn't lose dedication, but it just continues as you have been used it before. And I think this is quite a strong signal to you as partners and customers that also like Boyum, like the new mother company, allows us to continue on this same path that we were before. So this is really cool stuff. So now this webinar, and I won't look into VPS and VJS because we only did small stuff there and did a couple of bug fixes. So as announced earlier this year, the development focus and hence also the communication focus is on the VAPS, and hence I will focus on the VAPS and what is new. And yes, the webinar is titled Sequence Dependent Setup Times, SDST, as the famous abbreviation says. But we actually, with the early July release, shipped more than the SDST functionality. So I want to give you, and first, like a high-level overview on what we built and shipped, And everything that I show you is available on AppSource. And if you're on-prem, reach out to your partner or reach out to us, reach out to me directly, and then we can give you the new installation file, and then you can get it going with what I show you today for the latest Business Central version and the last two. So the new features in version 1.18 is like we shipped 5 new features. And the first one, of course, was like the big theme for this release. And we have been working on this for a quite long while, both like coding wise, but conceptually. And this is that, first of all, in Business Central, we now allow you to define sequence-dependent setup times. What does this mean? So if you produce something and the sequence of your production orders on a machine determine the setup times, then Business Central does not allow you to define this, right? So if you define setup times in routing, and if the routing goes to a painting line, then the setup time is always the same. Although in reality, staying with the painting line example, typically, if you go from a light color to a darker color, you have a shorter time that you need to clean the machine. And when you go from a dark color to a light color, it takes you a long time to kind of clean the painting line. So, and this type of setup matrix, or this time we call it the sequence-dependent setup time. So the setup time that depends on the sequence that you have the production orders on your machine center, on your work center. This is something that Business Central does not have. It does not exist in Business Central. So first of all, we had to define like the master data that you have in Business Central so that you can model these cases. And after we did this, we also need to make sure that when you then schedule, that we take it into account. So we did like 2 enhancements. We enhanced the Business Central master data, and then we enhanced our own scheduling algorithm. And I will talk about this in all the details in a couple of minutes. Then we have 4 more features which are really cool. So when we move operations, so we move multiple operations at one go, we can custom sort them. We have a new color scheme. We have a better integration between the required due date, which is the VAPS field on the production order, and the sales order due date. And we also made some enhancements of the one enhancement on the EMAT function. EMAT stands for earliest material availability date. So with the VAPS, we not only have a scheduling algorithm, but we also have an algorithm that actually, based on data we find in Business Central, calculates on production order level, on production order line level, and production order component line level, an earliest material availability date. And we just improved this function a bit. So let's look at these 4 functions like in a little bit more details. And what I want to do is I just want to explain you what these functions do and why they are for. I won't show them because I really want to focus on the SDST, sequence dependent setup times function this time. But just like these 4 features, I think there are a lot of useful smaller additions to the VAPS. So move operations with custom sort order. This is when you are on one production order routing line, one operation, do right click, you can say move operations, and then you can select 1 or 2 or 3 or as many production order routing lines as you want, and then move them on one card, move them from one machine center to the other, move them from this week to next week. So move them on block. And now actually, in order to support the SDSD function that I will show you later, we enhanced this dialog with which you select those production order routing lines that you want to move in a way that you also can sort them, so that you can say, okay, I want to move these 8 operations, these 8 production order routing lines in one go, but I do not want to move them in the same sequence of order that I have, but I want to like reorder them and then determine the sequence in which they get scheduled again. And so the way of how this is done is you can now, on this move operations table that we have, when you right click on the production or routing line, so on the bar in the Gantt chart, when you right click there, select move operations, you get a table, and now you can basically, when you select what you want to move, you can also sort what you want to move. So this is pretty easy, but it is kind of very important to support efficiently working with the SDSD function. Then we have a new color scheme, which is called the execution status. it was built on a request and or recommendation from a couple of partners and customers, where our customers want to see execution issues faster, and it's the first step. So we are going also to spend some more thinking on it. So now we have a new color scheme that differentiates, so that on one glance you see like what is finished, what is in progress, what is ready to get started. So where the predecessor is finished, and then any other operation that neither is finished nor in progress, nor where the predecessor is ready to get started. And with the color scheme, we define 4 colors, like we gray out as you use it from the VAPS, the ones that are finished. Like in solid gray, the ones you will see the ones that are in progress. Green are those that are ready to start, and blue is the rest. And the interesting thing is here, like sometimes this will also help you identify like some data issues, so that you see something gray out, and then after that like whatever blue, and then after that it is solid gray, so in progress, and then you know, okay, actually this cannot be because, and then it will tell you on one glance that whatever somebody forgot to post, or something in the posting process went wrong. And then we have in the VAPS the production order header. We with the very first release of the VAPS, we actually enhanced the production order header with a field that we call the required due date field. And this is a field where we want to give you full control. And we use this required due date also in the VAPS to kind of visualize if the production order is late or not. And as with the previous versions, we made a much tighter integration between, let's say, production and sales, and between the production order and sales orders and the VAPS and the production orders and sales orders. We recognized that like we could have done this better. So we wanted to even have this integration between sales and production more robust. And this means now that because what we have already is when a production order serves a demand from a sales order, and then the production entry is reserved for the production order, then when the production order is moved out, we change the demand date on the sales order, and also we give notification to the sales guys, hey, actually this got changed. However, what we didn't have so far is that when the sales people made changes to the sales order demand date, then VAPS-wise, this did not have an impact on the required due date field. So now, when the salespeople change on the sales order the demand date, then the required due date on the production order header is automatically updated. So this is done automatically. Let's see, there was no question. And then last but not least, I see that somebody raised the hand. I just do not see that the one who raised the hand has a question. So just in case you have a question, the one who raised the hand here in the GoToWebinar chat pane, then just please post the question into the chat box, and then I will answer the question. So I can read the question and I read it loud, and then I can answer it. So last but not least, we have this algorithm that calculates the EMAT, the earliest material availability date, and we have customers who and the EMAT looks at location code. So if you have a demand on location code A and supply the same material in location code B, then EMAT would not allocate from location A to location B unless there is a transfer order. But we have customers who, whatever, they produce medical devices in a clean room, and in a clean room, like the physical space is small. So they have like the clean room defined as one location, and then like the incoming warehouse at the other location. And then what they do is they have a kind of Kanban principle, so that whenever they need something in the clean room, they call in the warehouse and then just bring the products there, or the required items there, because they cannot like store those required items for production in the clean room. And so in these cases, by default, they cannot have supply of items in the clean room. But nevertheless, in the incoming warehouse, they have enough supply. So now we have the capability that in this case, we can say, okay, actually the production order demand should get fulfilled both from the location clean room and from the incoming warehouse. So now we can bundle multiple locations as like a source of or a supply for material. And we do this on the location settings in Business Central, and there you can define complementary inventory locations. So this is quite useful. These are quite useful additions. Let me see, now there is the question coming in, and I will answer that. So the question is, you spoke about the required due date changing when there is a reservation made in a sales order. We currently have a system where we don't reserve on sales orders. VAPS has to look at the overall stock instead of the reservations. For example, we produce the stock and then the sales team changes the delivery dates from the 1st to the October to the 1st of November. Even there's no reservation. Does VAPS look at this and change the required due date anyway? No. It won't. We need the reservation, because without a reservation, we do not know which production order is meant to serve which demand from a sales order. So we really, like with this integration between sales order and production orders, we depend and we rely on having reservations. So, and then if you have further questions on this, then I suggest we take it offline, because now actually I just wanted to give this as a brief overview on what we build in addition to the SDSD function, the sequence dependent setup times function, which is definitively the release highlight. And from the webinars that I've been running, you know that I love doing demos, and I'm not shy doing live demos in a webinar, and I will do. But first of all, and this is always important for us when we work with partners, when we work with customers, when we do on behalf of our partners, we do customer trainings, then what we do in the very first sessions, we always try to explain what we had in mind when we built the VAPS. What are our concepts? What is our thinking? What is our methodology? Because we think and we believe that the better you understand what we had in mind when we were building something, you better can understand how it works, why it works, as it works, and then you can also better apply it. So before I go into the demo, I just want to talk a little bit about what did we have in mind when we built this new functionality. So what were kind of our product design parameters for this first implementation that we did? And well, the very first thing is we decided for a minimum viable product approach. So we did not try to make the perfect setup time oriented optimization and scheduling and whatever. But we also sat down with a couple of customers. We sat down with a couple of partners who have demand from their customers and who've also experienced with other solutions and made some workaround in the past in BC, and we got a lot of advice and a lot of feedback and said, okay, we try to build something that fulfills the main need of customers, that they want to see the impact of bundling similar production orders on one machine, on the throughput time. And so we decided for minimum viable approach to deal with varying setup times based on the sequence of those production orders on the same machines, on the same machine center or work center. The new function that we built is 100% in line with what we believe and what we are confident about is really best for scheduling. This is like the VAPS philosophy. We don't have a magic button. There is no button that optimizes a schedule, and nobody, with the exception of the mastermind that developed the algorithm, understands what is going to happen. This is not how the VAPS works, and our experience is this is also not how scheduling in an SMB environment should work. So we continue to base the VAPS on simple principles, and we have focused scheduling instruments. So we give you a button here, a button there, and a button on another next place that you can press to achieve one change to the schedule that you can understand. So that, again, no magic button, but there is a new button that you can say, now I want to use the information I provided to the system regarding sequence-dependent setup times. The next one is when we load data in the VAPS, we really respect Business Central. We respect all the data coming from Business Central, as good or as bad it is. So this means the production orders that you see on the standby resource, they carry the information from the standard production order routing lines. So when we load and the same is true for the alternative routing sets that we used to have in the system since the beginning, is we only apply the additional master data when we trigger certain actions in the VAPS. When we load, it is native Business Central data so that you can really see what happens if native Business Central data are treated with a new scheduling algorithm that does not backward scheduling against infinite capacity, but forward scheduling with finite capacity. And then if you want to use the new master data that we allow you to define, you have to tell the software. So it does not happen magically or automatically or some in the background, but we have a scheduling instrument where you can say, hey, I actually want now to see the result on the schedule if I apply the information I define, let's call it in the setup metrics. And then it gets applied. If you don't hit this button, you created master data, but you're not using it. Very important to know. And the interesting thing is we built it in a way there are no limitations of how many work and machine centers that you or your customers can have to schedule with varying setup times. We really recommend, even if you say, okay, well, I have this painting line, I have this drilling machine, and I have whatever this laser machine where setup always is complex, and now I need to kind of use this function for all these 3 machines at once. Don't do it. Start with your most critical, your most critical machines, and start with whatever your most machine or your most expensive machine, or start with where you know you have like the severest bottleneck, and then implement the master data, the new master data for this new function first, test it, and then look at the effect, understand what is happening. And then when you see, okay, now I actually got this, and now I apply this for a second machine or second work center, then you can do. But don't do it at once. It's a lot of work to also define the master data, to get your head around what you need to define. So start with a bottleneck. Really start with the bottleneck, not do it all in once. And this is also something so from product design, we gave you no limitations here, which is really cool, but there's usage recommendation to do it one after the other. We integrated the SDSD function with the item attributes. So Business Central has items, as you know, and the items can have attributes, and typically the item attributes drive the setup behavior. In painting, it's the color. In other processes, it's whatever metallurgical characteristics, or it's the width, it's the thickness, it whatever. So typically it's item attributes that drive different setup times. And so when you want to work with the SDSD function, you need to know it is related with the standard BC item attribute. So everything in terms of setting up new master data starts with the item attributes. And this was a long design decision. We do not work with the setup matrix. So now I assume you have whatever, you have painting line and you have 10 colors, then you could kind of draft a 10 times 10 matrix with all the colors in the lines and in the rows, in the lines and in the columns, and then you can put in every cell of the matrix a value. We thought that this could be like easily become a nightmare to implement and to maintain. So we actually, in the, let's say, VAPS SDSD world, decided that we kind of want you to first maintain 2 values. The first value is standard setup time, that you say, okay, on this machine, on this painting line, I always have 45 minutes of cleaning. This is the standard time. And then you say, okay, then I have a same value time. So if it goes from same color, so from yellow to yellow, no cleaning, so 0. Or if you say, okay, but afterwards I have to like change the color, it always takes 5 minutes. Then even if it's like, or I have to kind of refill the color or whatever, if there would be like always, even if it's same color, same value, it would be 5 minutes, then you could put it the same value. And then you define exceptions. So then you can say, okay, but if it goes from black to yellow, it's 5 hours. If it goes from black to blue, it's 3 hours. And if it goes from orange to yellow, 1 hour. So there's a standard value that you can find. You can define the same value, and then you can define the exceptions. And these are really like the design parameters. And now let's go slightly but steadily towards the demo. And before I go into the demo, I just want to share with you the use case that I created to do the demo. So in my sample company that we will look at, there is one machine center where I have set up times that vary by the sequence of order of the production orders on that machine center. And this machine center is in the work center laser drilling, and the machine center is called Epilogue Legends 36 EXT. And the idea here is in laser drilling, I have an item attribute, and the item that drives the setup times, and this item attribute that drives the setup time, the diameter of the hole that I need to drill, whatever, in a metal sheet or in a piece of wood, whatever, in a metal, let's say metal sheet. So I have a metal sheet, I need to drill a hole in a metal sheet, and the hole can be 3 millimeters, 2.5 millimeters, 2, 1.5, and 1 millimeter. And the idea is, the smaller the hole is, the harder it gets not only to set up the machine, but also to test run the machine until like my laser drill has like, until the hole has the really exact size. So in this case, it is somehow ideal to go from small to large. And then the way of how I set up this Epilogue Legend machine center is, I said, okay, first of all, I have routings for production orders that goes to this machine center, and there in the master data routing to standard business central, I say, okay, it will always take 480 minutes, right? And with this, by the way, you will see it later on, I will get a nice buffer in my schedule. And then I said, okay, when I apply the SDSD function on that machine, the default setup time should be like 1 hour. So when I like start with something new, on average, it should take 1 hour, and then the same value. So if I go from like one production order where the diameter is 1 millimeter to the another, it should be 0. And then I defined exceptions so that I said, okay, whenever the target, the next production order has the smallest diameter, it's 480 minutes. So if I go from 3 to 1 millimeter, if I go from 2.5 to 1 millimeter, from 2 to 1 millimeter, from 1.5 to 1 millimeter, it's always 480 hours. So I used the longest time from my exceptions as the standard time in the master data routing. And then I said, okay, if the hole is smaller, so if it's not a 1 millimeter hole but a 2 millimeter hole, then it takes half the time, so 240 minutes. So from 3 to 2 it's 240, and from 2.5 to 2 it's also 240. And so these are my exceptions that I have, and we will look at how to define them in BC in 2 minutes. So my structure of production is then I start with laser drilling, and then I need to do some deburring afterwards. So I have a production order with 2 routing steps. The item that is produced here is in my system called component P, couple of zeros, a number, and then, and I will tell you later on why I have this, then there's a minus, and then I have like the diameter information from here. So I have in the item description, in the item name, I have like a reference to the item attribute that drives the setup time. Really important. And then just to have it a little bit more complicated, I will use the part that I produce here. I will use this as an item on the BOM for another item. So I have another production order here for an item called P, 4 zeros and then 2 numbers. And the production order for this happen in work center assembly and work center quality control. So here I have machine centers, here I have work centers. And so I have two production orders now. They are linked to each other via reservations. So it is like a make. This is make to order. This is make to stock. So from here it goes onto stock. And the first step of this process is now which is like critical when the setup time is so crucial. I just wanted to have like this complexity here, so that when we look at the data, it is a little bit more realistic and you really see like the impact of like the downstream processes. And this is the structure of the production. And then I will use the SD functionality in a certain way. So first of all, in my case, you saw, I think I had 5 or 6 like I think 5 diameters, 6, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, it's definitely less than 15 or 20. And then if you only have like a manageable amount of item attribute parameters or item attribute values, as Business Central calls it, then it really makes sense that per item attribute value, you define a specific color for the item, which you can put on the item card. I will show you. And that way then in the VAPS, the item color view really becomes a very powerful helper, because then also by color, you see which type of production orders are for the same or the similar item and should get clustered together. So then if production orders are created in the VAPS, they show up on the standby resource, and you have to execute the add for all function so that they get scheduled against finite capacity. And you can do this with the table that most of you have seen or are familiar with. And it is really important, or it is really recommended, that you enhance this table so that it includes information that help you to pre-sort your production orders. In my case, like I made a trick, I didn't want to put extra code on it, but I knew which information I have in this table. Information in this table, I have the item description, and then as I have in my item description the reference to the parameter, and the items are kind of set up like with the same numbering code, then I have this information there, and then I can really pre-sort on this table, and then I can say, okay, I want to like, before I schedule, I want to bundle all the ones with the smallest diameter, then the 1.5s, then the 2.0s, and so on and so forth, so that they get scheduled in the right sequence of order. So then execute this add all, and then I add them to the schedule in the predefined and the pre-sorted way. Then they are in the schedule, and then we have to tell the VAPS, hey, now actually you need to take different data. Now you don't need to take the data that you find in the routing, in the production or routing lines, but you need to take the data that you come from the new master data, and this is the SDST data. And then we adapt the length of the production or routing lines based on the data we find there. And if you have set it up in a way like I did, that the master data routing has the longest time from the setup metrics, then you will experience a lot of gaps in your schedule. So then you have to tighten the schedule again. And I would do it first on your SDST machine center, and then you can squeeze the rest of the schedule either by tighten queue or by say filled idle times. And this is what I will do now. And so now with this, let's go and log in to Business Central and look at this, how to set up the master data, and then how to execute these steps. So as I said, it all starts with the item attributes. So then this was not only like a rubbish phrase on a PowerPoint slide, but it's actually what we do. So now I go to item attributes. You see one of my item attribute is the diameter. And then you see like on diameter values, I have the one that you saw on the spreadsheet, the 1.0, the 1.5, the 2.0, and so on and so forth. And then this is a general definition of the item attributes. So now quickly look at one of my items that starts with component, because these are the ones, and then you see here, like this is now the component, and it has the nomenclature as I showed you, P, couple of zeros, 5.2, and then minus 1.0 0 millimeters, and then in the description I again have the reference to the attribute that is critical. And then when I go to the item and go to the attribute, then you see for this item the diameter is 1.0. So then what I have is, and this is like here you see on the color, I said, okay, for that item that has like the item attribute diameter as 1.0, I want to show this in the VAPS in yellow. I typed in yellow, but I could have also selected a color code from here. And then if there is another item with 1.5, it should show in orange. So then visually, I will also have a differentiation of kind of what type of diameter this is. So now let's go back to so now you see I have my items, and all these items have a certain diameter. So they have like I populated all item attributes to the items. And now let's see actually how I can set up the SDST related data. And then I go back to the item attributes, go where I was. So we were here on the diameters. Now I select the diameter, and then you can actually say here attribute dependent setup times. So now I can define setup times that depend on the attribute. And if I click here, then first of all, I get like a number, and I can give this is a configuration number. I can give it a description, and I say this actually should be for my Epilog Legends. I could have also said like laser drilling or whatever. I won't talk about the handling rule, but then I have the default setup time. I say, okay, this always will take 60 minutes, and same time value time is 0. And then from here, I can also define the exception. So then I can say, okay, if I go from 3 millimeters to 2.5, it's 2 hours. If I go from 3 to 2 millimeters, it's 4 hours, and so on and so forth. So this is exactly as you saw in the list. So now if I switch from production order, where I produce an item with the attribute 2 millimeters, and then I change to production order where like the diameter of the hole is 1.5 millimeters, then the setup will take 6 hours, or 360 minutes. All right, so then I have defined this, and then I need to go back here, and now I have like defined which item attributes I have, and also by going here, I made this item attribute diameter. I told the system, hey, this has an impact on the setup time, and I defined the specific item, specific setup times, and I also made the exceptions here. And then, of course, within a routing for a production or for an item, there can be certain routing steps, and there can be certain machine or work centers. So I not only have to say that this attribute drives the setup time, but I also have to say where this item attribute drives the setup time. And this is hidden behind these dots here. Then I can say, okay, I need to associate this sequence-dependent setup times for this attribute to a work center or a machine center. So now I have the configuration number. This is the number I gave here, my configuration number 10. And then I say this configuration number 10 should apply to a machine center, and the machine center number is 220. And this is my Epilog Legend machine center. So now you saw I have items. These items have attributes, and these attributes have values. I first have set, by clicking here and giving this value, that this item attribute is setup critical or has an impact on the setup time. By defining the times and by defining the setups, I said, okay, what is the setup time depending on the sequence? And then I associated this with the work and machine center. And with this, I have all data available to schedule based on setup times. And I see there is a question coming in. Let me first now finish the flow of my demo, and then I will answer it. It will take me whatever. The demo is short. It will take now like 5 to 10 minutes. So please give me a couple of time just to finish it. So now that I have defined the data, let's use the data. So now I go to simulation, I quickly create a new simulation, which means I copy production orders into a separate table, so then run scheduling it. And now I say color view type item view, so that I get the item specific color in my visualization. So now I'm creating the simulation, and then we can view it so that we can look at the data, and then we can start scheduling. So let me quickly load this. With progress dialog, I always know what we are working on right now and how many data this is. Like it's 300 production orders. And now here we go. Okay, so now we know my setup critical time is here in laser drilling on this Epilot legend. All production orders that I have are on the standby resource, and you see like Business Central didn't pay respect to any setup time. So currently this is like, this would be overloaded, and there is also no good sequence because you see like blue, black, orange, like all like cluttered around. Then from here, it will go into the deburring, and then you also can see like later on, it would go to the assembly and then into the quality control. I have some more work in machine centers here, like this line 2, and others, but we do not need this. So there's a lot of production. I see we do not need this for the demo. So let me collapse this. So now one thing that you should be aware of is that what I did is this is the production order number. This is the item name, and in brackets I have the setup time so that we just can understand what we said. And as I said, in the standard, in the master data routing, I always put 480. So now I have always a setup time of 480 minutes here for every production or for every production or routing line that is on the standby resource. So now the next step is I need to schedule them. And this is what we do with the add all function, or with the add all including alternatives. And I will do this now from production orders. And now you see I have all my production orders here that are on the standby resource. And I recommended that you do something, or that you add to the item description a reference to your setup critical attribute. And you see here in my description, I have a reference to the diameter. So now I can sort it here. And then with this, like I have a nice structure, because then I have like first the production orders with diameter 1.0, then 1.5, then 2 points. So I brought them by sorting in a good sequence of order. If you can't do this, so if you can't add reference to the item attribute to your item description, then try to figure out which characteristic you have that you can use to pre-sort those production orders. Because now if I select them all and add them to the schedule, we will schedule this production order first, and that, and so that then we have them already like pre-sorted and pre-clustered on the machine center in the right sequence of order. So now, and because I didn't have production order on that machine center, it all starts from the scheduling start, with which is tomorrow. And now you see them one after the other, but still taking the setup time from the standard routing 480 minutes. Because I didn't tell the software yet, hey, you have to look at the data that is SDSD related. This is something that I do on a right mouse click. I say apply SDSD information. If I would have multiple machine centers and work centers, I could also do it from here, action schedule, apply SDSD information. Now I do it machine center specific. So then we only look for this machine center where we execute the function. We look at the SDSD information and we apply them. And now you see everything went shorter, because now here on the very first production order routing line, we have the stand-up setup time of 60 minutes, and then the next production order, same value, then it's 0. We didn't compress it yet. We just show like how it behaves if we apply this. And so then the next step is to compress the schedule so that you have one after each other without these gaps. And the scheduling function that we have to this is Tighten Queue. Tighten Queue reduces gaps between production orders on one, or production or routing lines on one machine center or work center without changing the sequence. So now I can say Tighten Queue on this machine center, and then it will also recognize, because I do it now isolated on a machine center, that there is some free capacity today. And now it is scheduled nicely one after the other with some setup time when I change over as I defined it. And then same value 0 for the others that have the same characteristic. And now you also see the value of having the item specific colors, because I really see that this is in a nice sequence of order here. And once you did this, so now you see what happened now is we scheduled everything with a long setup time here. Then we applied the setup time from our new master data. So the operations became shorter, and then we squeezed it together. And I executed everything just here on that machine center. So now, right now, like the routing is not that ideal. You see, I'm finished here, and then there is a gap to here. So now what I now, and then even worse, like from here to here. So now what I can say is for the entire schedule. So now that I have like organized and arranged my production orders, taking on the setup critical machine center, then now I can say, okay, now I want to compress the schedule, and I can either say tight queues for the rest of the schedule, or I can say fill idle time, which means we would also like change the sequence of order. Now I just do tighten queue so that we kind of reduce the gaps in the schedule without changing the order. And then you will see, like from here, it will look much more compact, much more organized. And then like it goes to assembly whenever it goes to assembly. And there is some like material availability issues, and hence like the second step is that late. So now I have ran to the things that I wanted to show you. I showed you how to set up the master data, and I showed you how to apply it, and I also gave you some ideas on which sequence of order to apply this now. And now I'm looking at questions that came. Or is there possibility to group certain material attributes to be handled with certain capacity? It is for welding with certain certifications. Right now, we have no capability yet to group certain item attributes, but it is by like the single attribute value, as I showed you. But I will definitively take this as a suggestion to the development team, that we say, okay, actually, there might be an idea that we bundle certain attributes for optimizing, but we can also have an offline chat on this, so that I make sure we understand your requirement right, and then we can discuss if and how we can bring it into the product. And then more detailed, if there is a basic configuration for resources, but based on item attributes, VAPS actually uses valid resources based on attributes. Yes, so we take like the resources, we take the work and the machine centers, we take them from the routing that you define in the master data, or from the alternative routing that you defined within the VAPS. So we give the users the capability to predefine, let's say, the allowed work and machine centers, and then we schedule it to those allowed work and machine centers. And then for those where the setup time is crucial and where the setup time varies depending on the sequence time, then we also we apply the information from the SDSD setting. And with this, let me go back to conclude the webinar. Let me go back to my slides. And so what is next? So first of all, and you sensed in the very beginning that I am super excited about this function, and I'm super excited that now, although we as Netronic are part of Boyum, we didn't lose the traction, we didn't lose the speed, and we kind of delivered what we have been promising for quite a while. And then when we did the acquisition, and I still can remember this, I also ran a webinar because it was like shortly after we got acquired, shortly before we got acquired, we had also a release of the VAPS. And so I did a webinar and said, actually, hey, guys, there are a lot of synergies between Boyum and Netronic. And actually, when we were looking at Netronic, we always saw some areas where we could have done better, or where we could have like grown faster and provided bigger value to you guys by building additional products. And Boyum has them, and now we have the capability to provide a bigger value to you as customers or to you as partners by like combining those products that we are working on and that Boyum was working on. And so like the very next thing is a webinar next week, Tuesday, and I'm as excited about this webinar as I'm excited about today's webinar, because in this webinar, I will talk about Netronic manufacturing. Netronic manufacturing is like combining Boyum's cloud product with our scheduling products. And in this webinar, I will show you how the VAPS, so the Netronic scheduling product, former Netronic scheduling product, and Produce, which is a Boyum cloud product, and it is for shop floor execution, how they work together hand in hand. So then how you as a partner can provide your customers with like manufacturing process efficiency, where you not only provide scheduling, but also provide shop floor execution. So where you provide your operators with a screen where they actually can see in the sequence of order what they should work on next based on what was scheduled, but where they also can feedback information like how long it took, how much material that they consumed on the production order, and give this information back to the scheduler, and this all in one integrated digital process. And this QR code is like to register for this webinar in case you just didn't do it so far. And this is also really cool because when we made the acquisition, we had the vision to bring together like some of the really cool Boyum products with our scheduling products to have a stronger value proposition. And this is like the first time, and this is only a few months after the acquisition, that this is now like taking shape, and there's more to come, but this is the first step. And then when it comes to the VAPS, in the last couple of weeks after the release, we have done a lot of internal housekeeping. So you know how this is if you have a house or if you have a flat. So from time to time, you recognize, okay, now we need to clean up again. And now we need to tidy up things. And you won't get applause for it from anybody because everybody expects this to be cleaned up and to be tidied up. But then once you've done it, you recognize that the apartment, the flat, the house just looks nice. And this is what we are currently doing with the VAPS code. We do a lot of internal housekeeping, cleaning up, tidying up, and we actually see it will make the algorithm more robust, it makes the software more stable, and it will increase the performance. Then for SDSD, we're currently evaluating ways so that we can have item attributes or the item attribute values on the add all and on the move operations page, so that the recommendation that I give you, like you need to figure out a way that you can pre-sort the production orders in a way and add fields to this page, that we also give some help with this, so that we kind of, and it's really tricky because you can have multiple item attributes on one production order, and then this explodes the table. But this is our issue, and this is our challenge. We currently look, we will provide like access to the item attribute values on this at all and the move operations pages. We are currently not decided yet how. And then with the earliest material availability date functionality, we will also enhance this to facilitate use cases where customers actually have a negative value on the BOM. So we have customers who have on the BOM, like they do some kind of casting, and so they have like the cast on one routing step, and then it gets used, and then via routing link code and a later routing step, they have it on the BOM again, because then the cast is no longer be used because it's like whatever they put in their is hard, and then they can reuse like the same item for a new production order. And currently, with a lot of head scratching, actually, how to deal with cases where we have a -1 on the bottom, and we will have something there going forward. And then you will see next week there like the first integration between VAPS and Produce, and then we have ideas on how to even better like align the products with each other so that they can really work like hand in hand. So there is also something more to do than what we have done in the last couple of weeks, and what I will show you next week. And with this, I want to express my sincere thanks that you took the time today to join me for this webinar. It's always a pleasure to have you here. It's always a pleasure that you give me and us 1 hour of your valuable time to see what's happening. I hope that you liked what you saw, and I would be super excited if you could give me some feedback. Download it from the app source, test it out. If you have questions, if you have feedback, reach out to me directly. It's maka@boyum-it.com. And I am super excited about this. I continue to be super committed about the VAPS. And if you have ideas how to make this function better, or if you test it, if you work with it, if you implement it with your customer and you experience something, if you learn something about it, if you recognize, hey, actually, I found out that if you use it that and that and that way, and this is the best practice, please share with me, because together we will make a good product and a good solution for everybody. And with this, I'm really looking forward to see all of you next week in the webinar. And if you can't make it to there, I will be also attending Community Summit in October in the United States, and then Directions EMEA in Vienna in November. So make sure if you attend one of these events, you come by our booth and get hold of me. Let me then know what you think about VAPS with the SDSD functionality, which ideas you have, and then also after you will have seen Netronic manufacturing next week with VAPS and Produce, let me know what you think about this. And with this, thanks for today. Any questions? I will stick here for a minute or so. So if you have a question, then ask it now, or reach out to me after the webinar via email or call me. Really happy to engage with you. So I don't see any other question coming in. Give you some time to discuss. I get some nice feedback there, like great function with sequencing. Yes, it is great. I'm glad that it's there, and I'm glad that you appreciate it. So thanks all. Seems no more question. Just applause for the developers who built this. So thank you very much for this. Enjoy the rest of your day and see you next week. Bye-bye for now.